What's up, dudes? Welcome to University. I'm actually Geeky and welcome to a new episode. And today we're going to be reviewing episode 1 of Doom Patrol, the DC 2019 series of the DC Comics based upon the Doom Patrol team. Now, this is going to be spoilers for people who haven't seen the team, and I think also they gotten approved to do a season 4 or season 3 by this point, so obviously they're going in very good places. So this is based upon the Doom Patrol team that was created in the 1960s, around the same time that Marvel was doing the Fantastic Four and X-Men and other weird teams that were spawning from this. The Doom Patrol, however, is not really a team of X-Men, but at first that's what they were considered to be. But in this series, they are definitely not X-Men. They are much more than X-Men. They are more than mischief, so to speak. But when Grant Morrison took over the Doom Patrol, he really identified who these people were, so it's very much based upon Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol. I haven't read it. I'd love to read it, but I'm just letting you know that ahead of time. So a lot of these characters are basically going to be Morrison creations, which is not a bad thing. So when the episode first begins, we were introduced to a character called Dr. Norma? I've forgotten it already. It's almost like normal, but it's not. Or it is kind of a play on the word normal. And essentially, he goes and meets a doctor who is a Nazi. He's from Germany back during the 1940s, 1948 to be specific. So after this happens, he goes and meets the doctor, and the doctor keeps telling him to repeat the phrase that the mind is something. The mind is always open or something like that. Very good play on words, however. Then after that happens, he sort of becomes the narrator throughout the story, and it's not exactly a bad thing. Very granted that he's a very good narrator. I actually did like him in this, but I think he is the Doom Patrol villain called Mr. Nobody. That basically he does not exist, so to speak. And this experimentation happened in Paraguay, mind you, so this will become relevant later. So after that, we skip to the 1980s, where we are introduced to Cliff Steele. And of course, Cliff Steele is Robot Man, and they go into the origin of Robot Man a little bit. So Robot Man is basically this big, huge race car driver in the 1980s, but he has a lot more than just that underneath his belt. He has a daughter, he has a wife who their relationship wasn't really working out. When we're introduced to Cliff, he is off in the pool house or something, baiting his nanny. Yes. And when we were introduced to Cliff, the narrator, Mr. Nobody goes, "Now we're going to be introduced to a type of ass." So it goes to the nanny, the other nanny's butt, to the mom's butt, to the little daughter named Clara. I'm like, this is amazing. And all its retrospect and everything, like the narrator alone makes it worthwhile watching. So they go into the retrospect that he gets into a car crash accident at the basically the NASCAR stadium, and they're racing with 1980s NASCARs. Man, now I am a sucker for older vehicles, so this kind of caught my attention. Like, this is really cool to admire and look at. So after that happens, Cliff is eventually turned into Robot Man, and really it becomes the standpoint of Robot Man. Cliff Steele is played by Brandon Fraser, who does an excellent job in this. Brandon Fraser is never a bad actor. He really there has not been in any bad movies as far as I can tell. You know, he's been a really good guy slash actor throughout his entire career. The Mummy, Looney Tune Back in Action, I even consider a good film. So, you know, he does a good round actor. Looks like did he put on weight for this role? I don't know if that was intentional or if this is just him, you know, in itself. So mostly it becomes focused on Robot Man basically becoming a part of the Doom Patrol. He meets the Chief, now called, played by Timothy Dalton. And I have to say, Timothy Dalton is one of the best things about the Doom Patrol. His performance as Chief, aka Now Calder, is rather really good. He portrays Now Calder very, very well. Like, he down to earth with the team, he loves his team, but he does certain questionable things with his team, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But we're introduced to him. He's trying to get used to his robot body. They have to wheel him around, Hannibal Lecter style almost. He's attached to like the wheel thing that they used to wheel Hannibal Lecter around and everything. So the first person that he's introduced to is basically Rita as well as Niles. He had basically confronted with Niles. He held the meeting with Niles, and Niles tried to get everything out of him. Like, what do you remember? Essentially, what do you remember from your past? What do you remember? And he's like, I don't remember anything. But he gets to remember a lot more. He starts seeing his daughter. He starts remembering things slowly but surely. He starts remembering. But really, he starts remembering, but just very slowly, and everything like that. So it's very apparent that he does start to remember. But the first person that he's introduced to is of course, Larry Trainer, aka Negative Man. And Negative Man's origin story is really, really damn cool in and of itself. He essentially worked for NASA. He was supposed to fly an X-15 up into space, try to break through the barrier. The space race, as it was called back during the 60s, with President John F. Kennedy and of all. So, he gets sent up into space. He flies through, I think it is a solar storm. It's basically like an electric storm, and he gets attacked by the electric storm, obviously. So he starts crashing back down into Earth. He crashes, but thanks to the electric storm or the solar storm, he survives somehow. Not only that, but there was something else about Larry Trainer that I didn't know about, especially, when I started learning about the Doom Patrol, because it really interested me when I was getting back into comics as a teenager. Larry Trainer's gay. That's something I never knew about, and the thing is that's weird about that is that he is married and he had 2 sons. But they show him like later on that he's making out with his basically his partner, whatever that his name is, that also works for everything like that. So I thought that was like really something cool that Geoff Johns or whoever threw in there. I'm like, that's really cool. Especially back during the 60s, people would see that as monstrous, the vision of sexuality. So after, Larry tells his origin story and everything, we're introduced to Rita. And Rita's origin is a bit weird, and I'm trying to make a theory of what it's about. So Rita is just basically a stereotypical 1950s actress. She might be, like, basically... I'm trying to think of, like, some 1950s actresses, like, Audrey Hepburn. Would Audrey Hepburn be technically one? Like, some of the big names in the 1950s, I can't really think of anybody. But, she's beautiful, she's sexy, she's creative, a lot of things like that. So, in Africa, they are filming a film that is called something Congo, Mythical Congo or something like that. And, during the film, they were going to do the shot where they had a stuffed alligator come out of the water, like, dead, like it is an alligator. And all she had to do was scream, and the lead main character would just go bang, bang, shoot. But before that, they had a director or photographer or whatever that he was, who locked an arm to an alligator attack. This is something that is not uncommon in Africa. And she just could not stay in character while looking at her severed arm. And so, kind of in a rude tone, she tells her director or whoever, get rid of him. And he's kind of defending him, like, no, he's a really good, in focus kind of guy or photographer or whatever that he does. And she goes, I don't care what he is. He works for my ass. Get rid of him. I'm like, okay. So when her scene comes to happen, with the alligator attack, she falls into the water. And immediately just sucked down into the water. None of the African people helped. They were just in the background like... And nobody moved up until the director and somebody else said, "Will somebody help her?" And they all just come rushing to the rescue. Um, and she's attacked by a little green, basically, orb that goes into her mouth, and that's all that happens. She is pulled up from the water, and that's when she starts having um, basically deformity. Almost like she has like skin deformity. Her skin starts growing lumps. She starts like almost like like people when they go through a stroke, they look or something like this. So she goes. I'm not trying to be mocking or anything, but she looks like that. Her foot was enlarging, almost like the Elephant Man. Um, so nobody would help her because she was so disgusting. She was once beautiful and now looking disgusting, sort of like a metaphor to deformity. A lot of people see deformity as disgusting or whatever. So I think what happened to Rita's origin was that it was a witch doctor. The dude that lost his arm was a witch doctor. He was a well respected witch doctor in Africa. And after she disrespected him, he's like, nope, you know what? Cursed. Like, you are cursed. Like in all of Africa, they always tell you, do not disrespect the witch doctors. Because you know why? My friend the witch doctor and he told me what to say, and he said, you're cursed, bitch. So, Rita is basically cursed in this. So after a while, from 1995 to 2019, wow, basically as long as I've been alive till 2014, basically Robot Man goes into basically self-isolation, and the reason is because he's so damn depressed, and the reason because of this is because now plays back to him an old phone recording that he got somehow. And when he played it back, he remembers he didn't die in the car crash. He actually managed to survive in the car crash. His wife said that she was cheating on him with this older gentleman that is his basically driving helper, instructor sort of thing. And afterwards he goes, "Hey, we're doing a great job, partner, aren't we?" And he's like, "Oh no, you're fucking my wife." He hits him with the champagne bottle twice, and then he permits to stomp on his balls. The whole gentleman area just crushed. I'm like, oh, well, he's no longer having children, or he's no longer working in that area from forever now. And so, he's celebrating. He has this hot woman that basically he mains, but he's out of it. He's not enjoying it. He's just totally out of it. And he calls his wife and he begs her for forgiveness, which she ends up doing. While they're driving back home, Cliff kind of makes the joke like, "What's up for pancakes? We haven't had anything to eat in a while." And his wife screamed out, "Cliff!" And in front of them is like Final Destination style log truck. He drives underneath it. He gets injured badly, but his wife and daughter, apparently to him at the moment, dead. Both decapitated, gone. So after that happens, he starts to come back into realization. He joins Rita and Larry more. He starts talking to them more. He begins to walk and everything like that. How he learns to walk is actually very cute, but I'm not going to spoil it for anybody. Um, so when he does it, uh, when he realizes that his wife and daughter are dead, he starts beating things down. He pounds things to the ground, and he goes to Niles. He goes, "You are a cruel bastard." He said, "I can't feel pain. I can't feel hunger. I can't do anything anymore." He said, "I'm just an empty shell of the person that I once was. You are nothing but a cruel bastard." And I'm kind of like, oh, well, this is actually somebody accepting the realization of like I'm no longer who I was in the past, which a lot of people actually do, especially going through anxiety, depression, PTSD, coming back from a war kind of thing. They don't feel like themselves no more. They feel annihilated from humanity. So after that, we were introduced to a character who is basically a Grant Morrison creation. She just screams Grant Morrison. And her name is Crazy Jane. I don't know anything about this character. I believe that she is a Morrison creation. This is a woman who has multiple personality disorders, or MPD. So if you've seen the movie Split, very much so this. But the actress who plays Jane does a really great job changing different personas, and she had 67 of them. 67 personas that can each take different forms. Um, and I think that's really cool. There was one called Hammerhead, who's this tough chick that tried to beat the crap out of Larry, and then she went away, of course, because Jane is Jane. So later on, he gets to talk with Jane, actually talk with her and whatnot. And so they kind of have this really good connection. It almost feels like that Jane, in a sense, is his daughter, which really is kind of a cute thing that's going on for them. So Larry said that he's going out, basically investigation or whatever he does, and that he would return in the process. So Jane has this idea to take Larry's school bus, that basically was his garden, so to speak, and transform it into a mode of transportation. And Larry is just not having it. He's like, oh, hell no, we're not doing this. And she goes, we're going into town, bitches. And Cliff is the first one that says, I'm in. Rita was not having it at first until Jane insulted her, basically, personality. And she's like, Larry? And Larry is me in this process. He's like, nope, I'm riding the Noteboat. I am out of here. No. Then we just said Larry, and Larry's like, I gotta go too. So they all go into town, which is called Cloverton. I don't know if that's a reference to anything. I have no idea. But they all arrive in a Cloverton, and all of them are having like their own basic thing to do. Rita goes into a restaurant. She talks to this nice black colored woman about, herself. Egotistical much? Larry goes into a bar, and Cliff and Jane just hang out together. So while in the restaurant, Rita's asking the actress about, seeing her movies because she said that Rita Farley's movie helped her and her dad become closer and helped them get through, worse times back during the 50s, which is, always possible. And then she said something that insulted Rita, which I think turned her into her monstrous form, when she said, oh, Rita Farley did porn after she did her movies. And she's like, excuse me? And she's like, yeah, Rita Farley did porn. My dad had a, big duffel bag collection of them all. She couldn't take it, so she started deforming because I think, if you insult her, or if you don't call her gorgeous or beautiful, she feels insulted, so she goes back to her deformity. And she couldn't walk out of the restaurant, she just melts into a puddle of goo, essentially. Larry gets really embarrassed at the bar because everybody's looking at him because he thinks he's a monster. That's when they reference him being gay, as some people see it as a monstrosity sort of thing. But being gay, different sexualities, it's not a monstrosity. It's you, it's who you are. So Larry starts having a spasm, essentially, the storm that hit him, it's kind of trying to come out, and he's like, oh crap, I gotta go. He runs out. Cliff and Jane are hanging out in the park when Jane introduces something to Cliff. Your daughter is not actually dead. There are 3 Clara Steels I see on my phone. Of course, Cliff couldn't take it, so he grabs her phone and crushes it. But before that, Jane said that he should, in honor of his daughter, who he believed at first was dead, a birthday present, which he does actually do. And then when she admits this, there's some police officers who come to the park. Cliff is trying to tell them, nothing's wrong, officers, we're just trying to have a day. She just doped up because she smoked, a little bit of marijuana before the cops intervened. And he's like, no, officer, she's fine. She's just a little doped up. And then she changes personas into Hammerhead. And things get bad very quickly. But, however, the officer does not arrest her or anything because then the town is attacked by Rita in a Blob sort of fashion. So if you're a fan of the old Steve McQueen, the Blob, it is very much reminiscent of that. And the team is like, oh hell no. And Larry's like, oh god, Rita. So Larry starts running to Rita, but then negative man form comes out. But luckily, before anything bad happens, he rescues a woman from electricity falling on top of her car. We don't know if she got away or not. So a bus crashes into a car. There are children and the bus driver on top, of course. And Larry has to do something to stop Rita. And he tells Jane, we need to do something. Jane changes into a fire person form. And basically, Sunspot or Sunfire from the X-Men, basically. And he's like, no, not that. Anything but that. Because being on fire is not going to help us in the situation. So Larry picks up a giant piece of the ground and holds it in front of him as Rita slowly climbs up it, but she doesn't attack him. She starts to calm down and she tells Cliff, I want to go home. And Cliff says, we can do that. Let's go home. Let's all go home. So they go home, and Sheaf suddenly comes back into town. So Sheaf hears about what's going on, and he sees a donkey, but a familiar donkey that comes into play later. So, anyways, he goes home and he bashes the team, and Timothy Dalton really shined in his performance where he bashes them, but then he learned to appreciate them and whatnot and told them like what they are to him, which I thought was very good in his performance, especially Timothy Dalton being a grand actor as it is. But then Brandon Fraser comes in and delivers a line where he said, you are really a freaking stone-hard, cold bastard. He said, we can't go into town. He said, my daughter's still alive. Why didn't you tell me that? And he goes, I don't know if you're ready to accept that truth. And he goes, you basically ripped that away from me. He said, I can't go and see my daughter. I don't even have the chance to go and see her. And he said, would she really accept you for you? He said, how do I know if I don't give it a try? And, that's when Niall kind of talked him down and basically apologized for everything. So he was going to let Cliff basically walk out of the Doom Patrol and not be a part of it until Jane had the idea, let's turn back around and go and grab him. Everybody said yes, so they go and grab him as he heads back into town. So they all join him. And while they join him, Niall tells them all to be careful because he cares for them, because basically they are his family. So Rita starts deforming in the leg area. It starts to become like an elephant leg type of deal thing. And Larry just looks at her, kind of picks up her face and goes, like, you can do this. So they all walk in a formation, and again the narrator comes in and he calls them four terrific losers. And I'm like, is that supposed to be a reference to Fantastic Four? Because if it is, great job. So the donkey comes into play again. And then you have Mr. Nobody that appears with Niles, and he goes, hello, Niles. Not a long time, hasn't it? And I was just like, no, you're not supposed to be here. And he's like, I can be anywhere I want to be, Niles. It's not your choice, and not mine either. He said, the mind is a beautiful thing to waste, he told him. He's going on his little villainous thing, and he told him, he said, I've been keeping an eye on your four little team, on your four little losers. Niles, he said, I know what you're trying to do. He said, it won't work. And that's when the donkey, for no reason, farts. It passes gas. And it says the old phrase that Niles, I would think, said to Mr. Nobody. And when that happens, all of a sudden a big freaking gaping hole appears in the middle of the ground. And Robot Man said it all for me when he just said, what the fuck? And then it ends the episode. Roll credit. The Doom Patrol is not a team that deals with like Luthor or Brainiac or Doomsday or Amazo. They are not the team that deals with these street level threats. They deal with things weirder than this. They don't deal with the normal. They deal with the odd, the uncanny, the unnormal, the things that nobody would think about to end up happening. I did have to say I love the episode entirely. So thank you guys so much for watching, and remember, you may be a zero, but you're still a hero. Until next time.